The hardest part of any decision is knowing whether or not you're going to make the right one. And with buying a house, that's quite possibly an even bigger burden on you. I can tell you, me personally, I've purchased 3 homes in my entire life, and every single one of them's been new. 2 of them have been in tract home communities, one of them was custom build. I've learned a lot along the way, a ton of different things from each of these builds. The one thing I have learned for certain is that I will only live in new homes for the rest of my life. And here's why. Howdy guys, this is Michael McCall, your realtor here in San Antonio, Texas, and today we're going to go into all the reasons why I will only ever live in new construction homes for the rest of my life. Currently on house number 3, a new custom built home that we just finished on our 4 acres. Before we get into all those reasons why I only live in new construction homes, let me remind you guys that if you have any questions whatsoever about moving to San Antonio, about living in San Antonio or anywhere around here, Boerne, New Braunfels, Livonia, Seguin, any of those places, reach out to me, let me know how I can help. I am here for you guys. My information is right here, so be sure you text, email me, call me, anything you got, I'm here for you guys. If you do get any value at all out of this video, I would really appreciate if you could comment what you think. Hit that subscribe button as well and hit those little bells if you want more information about any of these new videos that I'm doing about life in San Antonio, Texas. Without further ado, let's get into why exactly I will only live in new construction homes. So here we're going to go through all of my experiences, my personal experiences that I've had in each one of these homes, the mistakes that I've made and what I've learned along the way so that you guys don't have to go through those same mistakes as I do. And also so you know exactly why new construction is such a great option whenever you're looking at buying a new home. It is no secret that San Antonio is one of the hotbeds of new construction homes in the entire country, and really all over Texas is this way, right? San Antonio especially, we have a ton of new construction neighborhoods going around, and most of these are these tract home developments. So like everybody, well, not like everybody, but like a lot of people, I started off with my very first home that I bought before I was a realtor was in a tract home development. It was in a nice community, had a good view, good greenbelt view out in the hill country, so it wasn't in town where, you know, you're kind of all around these little cookie cutter homes. It was a nice home, a much smaller community in our little neighborhood that was within the bigger neighborhood. But there was plenty of issues.
Houston, we have a problem.
Some of the big issues that we had here was that this was our first home. We had no idea what we were doing. We had a great realtor that we personally got along with really, really well, but she was a family friend, and we felt like there was a few things that may have been missed along the process. We looked at what felt like hundreds of homes. We put in several offers and lost out. It was kind of similar to this market in 2021, 2022, but not quite as extreme. The main reason was that we were trying to buy in areas at a very low price point that were super, super popular. You know, we looked at all these different houses, and actually we did have one offer accepted on one house. It was a pre-owned home, and as soon as we got into it, before we even did the inspection, we started looking into it a little bit more. We found termite issues, we found raccoons in the attic, we found sloppy craftsmanship on this updated home. I mean, there was all kinds of things that just scared us, so we immediately backed out and went back to the drawing board, and that's what kind of drew us to this new construction community. One of the things that I will say about this new construction community is that, like I said, this was before I was a realtor, so I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about these builders. I was going based off solely what research I could find online and what my realtor said. We went with this home, beautiful home, open layout, right, like I said, backed up to a green belt, had perfect size that we needed, but we did not know anything about this builder specifically, and we also didn't know about HOAs at that point in time. We didn't know about property taxes and how in this neighborhood specifically there was a mud tax which made our tax rate almost 3% per year, which is just insane. We also didn't know how those property taxes could increase over time. Whenever we bought the house, our mortgage payment was great. 2 years later, our mortgage payment had gone up by $200 a month because of how high the property taxes went up. It was just kind of insane because of that reason, and we were really frustrated with that. We didn't really feel that we did the research that we should have done up ahead of time, but we also felt like maybe some of these people should have helped us out a little bit more because this was our first time buying a home. The new home sales counselor was absolutely outstanding, super helpful, friendly guy, but I can also tell you that from our experience in this house, we would have definitely done a lot more research on some of the quality issues that this builder had in the past, because there had been quite a few of those issues. I mean, just in the first 6 months that we were in this house, we had 3 water leaks.
Apparently there's a leak.
One of those being in the foundation. They had to actually pull one of the post tension cables out of the slab and reinstall it, retension it, had to get an engineer out there to actually look at it and certify that it was done correctly. And they weren't even gonna do that if I wouldn't have pushed it. Luckily I was in construction at the time, so I was able to actually kind of fight for us a little bit more and get some of those things done that they didn't really wanna do. Because ultimately, as good a customer service as all these builders may say they have, they all work for themselves. They all work for the bottom dollar. It's gonna be hard to get them to do things that they may need to do, but they may not otherwise get pushed to do by other people who don't really know what to be asking for, if that makes sense. So whenever it comes to this kind of stuff, it was all under warranty, so we didn't have to really worry about paying for any of these things, but those issues did make us a little bit nervous. Ultimately, we learned, we had a lot of mistakes in this, our first home purchase, like anybody, but we learned a lot also. One of the biggest things I learned was to stand our ground and stand your ground whenever it comes to getting these things with warranty done. You know it's supposed to be right, and don't let them push you around and make you think that you're doing something wrong by asking something to be fixed. So after we moved out of this house, we sold it after a couple years in it and ended up renting for a while. This was right whenever I got into real estate. We decided to rent for one, to be a little bit closer to my wife's work, and also so that I could build up some time in the current job to be able to buy our next home. So the next home that we ended up buying, we bought in a very similar style community. We knew what we were doing this time. I've been in real estate for a little while at this point. We were able to go in, find this home that was with an outstanding builder that I had heard nothing but good things about, Highland Homes to be precise. That was one of the best decisions that we made going with this home. It was a little bit closer to where our family was at. Overall, the layout of the neighborhood and the house itself was just outstanding. I mean, super tall 11-foot ceilings in the living room and kitchen, had 2 islands in it. I mean, it was just a perfect home for us. It also was in a neighborhood that had the mud tax as well. So we knew what we were looking at this time, so we were able to budget accordingly, and we were able to go into it expecting our payment to go up over time. So we were conscious in our budget for that reason. HOA was a lot lower. We did that for a reason. We thought that the last HOA we lived in was really extreme, almost $1,000 a year for really not getting a whole lot of anything. And then this current one was a lot less. We were getting a lot more in the amenity side of things. The neighborhood was very, very young whenever we bought into it. So they were still gonna be building for a long time, and we expected that to happen. But we also knew that there was a chance down the road that we may go in and go a different route and could potentially sell sooner rather than later. And we'll get into that when we talk about our custom build that we're in now. 6 months into owning this second home of ours, this beautiful Highland home in this outstanding community, we decided that because of our financial situation and because of the way that the current real estate market was going, that we wanted to go ahead and buy land and build our custom home. Before I get into that, I want to remind you guys that on these tract home subdivisions, you can have a realtor represent you when you are building from the ground up there. I would highly recommend it. I've had several clients actually that have gone through the process of building in the tract home subdivisions from start to finish, and you get to the finish line and there is all kinds of issues that come up that the builder is just not wanting to do. So having somebody like me that's in your corner that can fight for you and help push back against a builder with you can really make a difference in that kind of stuff. So make sure that if you guys are considering buying or building in a new construction subdivision, you reach out. Now, getting back to where I was talking about with the buying the land and building our custom home. The reason that we decided to do that, after a few months in this neighborhood, we decided that one of our least favorite things about it was being able to stand on our back porch and see our neighbor's backyard. It wasn't necessarily that we didn't like the neighbor, but we wanted our privacy. We wanted to be able to sit out on the back patio in the quiet, peaceful nature of our yard without hearing what everybody else was doing around us. Our houses were 10 feet apart. I mean, it was just not the most ideal situation. I mean, mowing on the side yards, I couldn't even turn my push mower around on the side yard without going all the way to the backyard or all the way to the front yard. That's how tight it was. We ended up looking for land. We found 4 acres and we started the process of building our custom home. So a few questions that we had whenever we started this process was, why did you start building right after you bought a new home, just 6 months before? You're gonna have to pay taxes on that. Well, yes, we were gonna have to pay taxes on it, but realistically, I didn't really care too much about that because the market had gone up so much that we were going to make more than 15%. I think it was like 19 or 20% that we were going to end up making on the sale of our home once we did sell it. It was just kind of an extreme number, so we didn't really care about paying a small amount in capital gains taxes because of selling it so quickly. The other thing that we didn't want to wait on was for prices to go up even more. Being in real estate, I know that historically prices have always continued to go up. And even in the 2008, financial crisis, whenever housing was one of the main drivers of the economic downturn, the prices really barely went down, and just by a couple $1,000s, looking at the state of Texas as a whole. And realistically, the number of sales went way down. The total value, average sales price actually barely went down. It more so just kind of plateaued and then immediately started going back up. And you can check out this graph and see what I'm talking about here. We knew that this was a great opportunity for us to get into our home that was going to be a home that our kids were going to grow up in, that was on 4 acres of land, and we could do everything that we wanted to right away. We didn't want to wait, so we didn't. Now, don't get me wrong, custom building a home is one of the most stressful things that we ever did. It was something that made us grow a lot. We learned a lot about people. We learned a lot about ourselves and how we could handle certain kinds of stress. We've had a very cushy life up to this point, so we hadn't really had any big issues, and this was one that definitely caused some issues. Our builder that we thought was a great guy ended up not being the case. We ended up going through a whole bunch of different changes throughout it, and we ended up having to actually finish the build at the very end all by ourselves. Last 3 or 4 months, I essentially contracted everything out myself and had to pay a lot of the guys out of pocket because our loan just didn't have the budget to cover some of these different trades that we still had to come in and finish out the job. It cost us a lot of extra money, but again, talking about the market going up, overall looking at the market from when we started to build to when we actually finished the build, the market had still increased by like 20-25%. So we had a ton of equity at the end, even though I had to pay a bunch of money there towards the last few months to actually finish the build itself. Looking at some other different things, design issues going in, we had some issues with our design, being that once I started building the house, some different things came up that cost us a few $1,000s here and there. Different changes that had to be done after the fact, which is rework. So all of that is changes. I can't stress enough how important it is to vet for these builders and these designers. Don't just go with the first person that you find that seems like a good option, that has a good sales pitch and seems like a great guy up front. Once you get into the weeds of things, you start spending some time with them and start working with them and start asking questions, things tend to go downhill really, really quick.
Oh boy, another red flag.
That's really the biggest thing that I can tell you guys, is to make sure that you spend a lot of time figuring out exactly who you're going to use to build your house with, because it makes the biggest difference in the world. Even if you have to pay a little bit more than what you were hoping to, it's worth it, I promise you, because you will pay that in the long run. A few of the other things that I would recommend is to make sure that you guys have a lot of patience when it comes to some of these things. There are certain things that take a lot longer than what you were hoping that they would take, especially when it comes to weather delays and supply chain issues. I mean, 2021 was terrible. The supply chain was so bad that we had so many things that were delayed. Our windows pushed back, I think, like 3 months. It was kind of a big deal for that aspect as well, because that caused a lot of stress on our end and our builder's end, because he was trying to tell us dates that he didn't have any idea about. So that also added to the total friction between us, right? Other thing is, make sure you get everything in writing. If you have any agreements verbally in conversations ahead of time before you start to build, make sure that you get those either as part of the contract, is what I would recommend, or you get them at least in an email with him confirming all those things that you talk about. Never just go off of his word, no matter how good a person he is, even if you know him personally. Okay, now that I've kind of talked about the negatives of all this, let me go into all the positives, because there are a lot of positives about building a custom home. One, you get to pick the land that's going to be built on. I mean, that is one of the best things in the world. I mean, we can walk out in our back porch in our underwear. Not that we do that all the time, but I can tell you I fed the dogs my boxers a couple times. So it's a nice perk to not have anybody around you looking into your backyard. Our kids can run around back there. We don't have to worry about it. We can watch them from the comfort of inside our own house if we want to, if we're working on dinner, cleaning up, whatever. They can be in our backyard doing what they want to do. And I have no worries at all that anybody's going to be around, because we are so secluded back here. There's also the perk of being able to pick your own design plan. Like your own floor plan is your decision based off of your budget, of course, but you get to do whatever you want with it. And you get to pick all the finishes. Of course, everything is budget driven, but at the same time, you get to make those decisions. In these tract homes, you don't necessarily always get to make those decisions. You get to pick from packages where you can pick, like, either package A, B, or C, but those are your only options. You don't get to go in and customize things for the most part. The custom build route is great for that reason. Another good reason is that whenever you build a house, and this goes with tract homes as well, you can potentially have a lot of equity there at the end, especially if the market continues to go up like the crazy amount that it has gone up. You can go in and say, start building 1 year, finishes, 8 to 12 months later, over the last year, market increased by 25%. You know, that equity could potentially be used as your down payment. You, without having to put any extra cash as a down payment, you almost have 20% equity in the home already. So you don't have to worry about the PMI and everything else that comes with that. So it's a big plus in that regard, as long as you can have that patience to go through that whole process and be able to pay the construction loan as well, because during your construction process, you will pay a construction loan that includes, you know, making those payments on whatever draws that your contractor has made to start building the house itself. It's not like you just get to sit there like with the tract home subdivision. You start, you know, contract on building the home, and then your first payment isn't until you close on it. Whenever you're doing the custom build route, you have to go through and pay for it, you know, throughout the entire process. So you have to make sure you budget for that kind of stuff. And for me personally, some of the biggest benefits of building and living in a new home is that it's your home. Like, nobody else has ever lived in it before. You don't have to worry about, okay, someone smoked in here before. Okay, someone's dog's peed on the carpet over here and it's giving me allergies like crazy. Oh, I don't know if they took care of the AC system. None of those things are things that you have to worry about. The best thing about the custom build route, and especially building, and just building in general, right? Even with tract home, you get to watch it from that flat piece of land that you're putting your house on get to be built up to this beautiful masterpiece that you were going to call home. And it's one of the most fulfilling things ever, especially this custom route, after all the stress that we went through to get into that home at the very end of the day. And that first night that we slept in this house was just unlike any other. It was probably the best sleep that I've gotten in a long time. I could just tell you it was such a weight lifted once it was all done, and it was such a relief and such a happy feeling to be able to be in that home that you'd envisioned for months and months and months. The other great thing about building is that you get those warranties that first year. Anything comes up with any issues, you can get the builder to come back and take care of it. Also, if you already own your own piece of land, say you paid for it cash or it was family land that you were given, you can use that as your down payment actually as well. You can use that equity as part of your down payment whenever you start this whole construction process and whenever you close there at the end. So like I mentioned, with already having that 20% instant equity with building in appreciating time, it's kind of the same thing. You could use that land, instant equity, use that as your down payment. You don't have to really pay any cash other than your closing costs and whatever other little fees that the lender may have. So in short, guys, this is exactly why I will only ever be living in new construction homes. For me personally, there is no other way to go about it. Having the process go from start to finish is just unlike anything else. And I just love the fact of being able to be the first person in a home, be able to make it our own, be able to put our personal touches on it, and not have the stigma of anybody else that have lived in the house. It's your home and only your home for as long as you're in that home. All right, guys, so if you are looking for more videos about new construction homes and the process going through all of that, make sure you check out this playlist right here. And of course, guys, if you have any questions at all about new construction and going through that process or just moving to San Antonio in general, reach out. My information is right here. And be sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell, and comment if you have any questions or concerns, or if you just want to share what you liked about this video. Until the next video, guys, I will see y'all later.